working in that regulatory side of things with A2S with our clients for a couple of years now. So the point of today is just kind of help the public understand why we're doing what we're doing with the lead and copper lines, and just to kind of give more information there, and then what we want to get accomplished here with this project that we have with the state to help the city. So today we're going to talk about our Category A effort. That's work that we did, contracted with the state for Washburn. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about Category B work, what we're going to do, and then a little bit on the future with the lead and copper roll improvements. So what's this about? So what we're trying to do is protect the public from lead. So the lead and copper rule has been around since 1991. It's been around for a while, and there's been a lot of effort and work towards updating that rule because there's improvements that can be made to it. So that's been going on for at least about 10 years now, and then 2024 LCRI came through, and then the LCRI lead and copper rule improvements is going to happen in 2027. So we want to protect the public from lead, number one, and then we want to try to make sure the public's well informed and we're causing the least problems to you guys as possible. Make your lives easier, not more complicated. Okay, so ensuring a lead-free community. So parts of your water system. Many of you probably are already aware, but just to kind of explain it a little bit, the city has a water plant. When they produce their water, it leaves their system lead-free. The ways that lead gets into drinking water supply is going to be through lead service lines, which is something that's been banned in North Dakota since 1989. All right, and it's going to also it also could get into drinking water through like lead fixtures or lead solder. That's how it's going to get there. When Adam and his crew produces water, it's not going to have lead in it already. So just to be clear there. So leaves the water plant, goes through our distribution system through the water mains that are under the street. Then we have water service lines that come off the water mains. There's a curb stop near the curb in the boulevard, sometimes in the sidewalk or in the yard, that can turn on or turn off that service line, and then it's going to go into the home. Typically in North Dakota, we have water meters in the basement of homes. In a lot of rural water systems, they might have like a vault or like a manhole you can access where the water meter sits outside the home. So what we're interested in doing is identifying the service line material from the water main to inside the home. The public side of the service line is that service line that's from the water meter or the water main to the curb stop or the property line. And then the private side of the line is from that property line where the curb stop is into the home. So we have to identify material on the service line on both sides. Okay. So quick tangent here. So the city has sent out notification letters back in 2024, and they did again this year to any property that had a service line with an unknown lead or galvanized required replacement material on their service line, whether that's on the public side or private side. So you might have said, you might have told Chelsea or Adam, hey, I already submitted a survey to you guys. I know that I have a copper service line. It's not lead. Why did I get this notification that states that I have an unknown service line? Well, the reason that you would have gotten that is most likely we don't know what your service line material is. We might have a good idea what it is, but we don't know for 100% certainty that it's a non-lead line between the water main and the curb stop. So the public side is unknown. Okay, so that's why you would have received a notification letter. Okay, can anyone attest that they received a notification letter? Yep. Okay, was it kind of long and confusing?
Not really, I guess.
Okay, so I like to ask that question because there's been a lot of questions I've received from not just in Washburn but other communities too. They're like, "What is this thing? It's so verbose, confusing, long, whatever. A lot of the information in there is dictated by the EPA. So just to back up, so the lead and copper rule revisions and lead and copper rule improvements, those all come back down from the Fed. Okay, that's dictated by the EPA. EPA, the state agency that receives guidance from the EPA, is the North Dakota Department of North Dakota Department of Environmental Quality. Okay, so they're our state regulatory agency. Okay, and they're the ones that are pushing the information down to all the public water systems that, hey, this is requirements that you guys have to follow. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so that letter, a lot of the information in that letter and the way that it was written had to be that way because that's what the EPA was requiring. So, okay, so a little bit of a tangent there, but just going over the service line on, so that hopefully makes sense to everybody. All right, so locating your service line, and can anyone tell me where if they know where their service line comes into their home? Okay, so most people do, but there's people out there that are not familiar with it. They may have a crawl space and they never go down there, or they don't ever go into their basement because it's scary. But that's legitimately, I've had that before too. So the place that we're interested in knowing to identify the material of your service line for the private side is we want to see where the water service comes into the home. Okay, so typically in the basement, it'll come up out of the basement floor, or maybe even through the side wall of the basement, and then it comes in, and then you have probably a shutoff valve, and then you'll have a water meter. Okay, and then it goes into the premise plumbing. All right, so the survey that I'm going to show you guys, and that is live right now, and we'll turn it on to test. We'll have you scan the QR code and test it. It'll ask you to identify where the line is coming into the home, and we'll want a picture of that. The state and the EPA are requiring a photo, so that's why that's required. And I'll talk about it more when we talk about the survey, but that's another reason why the survey is electronic and not something you fill out on paper, because we want to submit it with a photo. Okay, and they'll ask you also about the premise plumbing, which is not as big of a deal, but it's still something that on the state's inventory they want to know what the premise plumbing is. Okay, but this is where we're mainly concerned, is right here where it comes in. That it will be those where we can identify it and how we can designate the private side of the service line. All right, so for category A work, that was the initial inventory that we did with the city. We submitted the initial inventory in the fall of 2024 when LCRI came into effect. We did records review. We did a survey that we sent out, and we uploaded the initial inventory to the state's portal. So they're tracking that for every public water system in North Dakota as of now. This year we did an inventory update. So I want to give props to city staff. They did a lot of extra work in going around and trying to identify the private side lines. So that's significantly lessened the work that we're going to have to do with the category B, because they were able to narrow down, I think we're at about 70 or maybe a little less than 70 unknown service lines on the private side in Washburn. So on the private side, we're in good shape in Washburn. But we submitted an inventory update to the state this fall. So that's the work that's been done so far. Is there any questions on the category A work that we've done, or what's been going on with lead and copper in the last year or two? You guys have any questions there before I move on? Kind of talked about that. So we went through record reviews to identify service lines to the best of our ability, and we did the survey, and then we uploaded the data. And this isn't a picture of Washburn specifically, but this is what our GIS looks like, our that database, and when we have a map for every client that we've worked with on this to show, where we're at on the inventory. you can show it on the information on a spreadsheet. You can also show it on a map, and sometimes it's a lot easier to tell and look and what you're looking for when you have it on a map. But this is our dashboard of Washburn, and this data it was updated after our 2025 upload to the portal. So map of Washburn, you got all the circles there. They designate the service lines. Okay, on the left side of the service line, that is, if it's blue, that means it's non-lead. If it's gray, that means it's unknown. And if it's red, that means it's lead. Okay. If it's yellow, it's a galvanized requiring replacement. There's very few of those, and those have to be confirmed if they are required, or if they're just galvanized, or if they're a required replacement. I wouldn't worry about those as much. Mainly, to point out, right now Washburn has 68 unknowns on the private side. Okay, and up there we have 407 unknown service lines on the public side. So a lot more unknowns on that side. Reasons why we don't have records to show everything definitive, even though we might have a good idea that they're non-lead lines. The state requires proof, right? So unless we have good records that say this is what the service line material is, we can't like send that up to the inventory that's what it is unless we can verify. Also, private sides, we can look in basements and people can fill out surveys, and we can identify private side. For public side, you can't do that unless you dig it up, right? If it's between the water main and the street and the curb stop, there's no way to look at it unless you dig it up. So that's why the higher unknowns on that. Washburn had a pretty good response rate on the survey. We were right around 30%. So thank you guys for that. And like I said, the city staff did a good job in reducing the private side a lot more from between 2024 and 2025. So good work there. And like I said, the left side of the line, left side of the circle is designates the public side, and the right side of the circle is the private side. If that makes sense. Any questions on that map at all? Okay, so for category B work, what we're gonna do is it's gonna be a repeat of category A work with the addition of door-to-door surveys. So something that the city staff has been working on in the last year. Now A2S is gonna assist them with that. And again, this is all funded by the state, so this isn't something that's costing the city any money. So we're gonna re-look at the records, because there could be something we missed, plus the inventory spreadsheets asking for some different information for that we had to submit for 2025 and 2026. They're asking about connectors, if there's a connector off of a service line, which very few and far between that actually happens, but it's still something we have to look for, and we have to report what we find on the inventory spreadsheet. We'll send out the survey again. The survey is live, and there's some information, some sheets I have over there on the counter by the sink. That has information on the survey. It has a QR code and a URL, and like I said, it's live right now. So if you type that into your phone or on your computer, the survey will come up, and I'll show you what that's going to look like here on the next slide. So those homes that have, and there's 68 of them in town right now that have an unknown on the private side, they can go ahead and fill out that survey, and then we wouldn't even have to bother them to show up and knock on their door. If we send out that survey and we're not getting a response from it, we're gonna come visit people and ask if we can assist them in completing the survey. So that's the goal, and that's the work that we're gonna do for this category B. And we are planning to start the door-to-door assistance work in January. So, won't bug anybody over Christmas or nothing like that, but we do want to start that effort. So, and if no one's home, we'll leave a callback number, like a door hanger or flyer sheet, that people can call us back and schedule a time that works for them. Okay, so if you typed in that URL, or if any of you want to do it, you could get your camera out or get your phone out and you can scan that URL right there, and this survey will come up. It'll look exactly like this. So on the first page, what you're gonna do is you're just gonna enter your address, okay? And it's gonna have this diagram on there and what you're looking for, what we're asking you to do, and it'll show you like a typical, like this is what a service line looks like as it comes into the home, so to help you identify where yours is if you're not familiar. And then you'll fill out this information, and you might already know the answers. Is it plastic or is it metal? If you click on plastic, it's gonna ask you questions down here. If you click on to confirm what type it is, what type of plastic material it might be. And then if you click metal, it's gonna ask you more questions too. It's gonna ask you, is it copper? Is it lead? Is it steel? And it'll tell you, it'll show you what you can do to help identify, because somebody might know what a copper line looks like. Well, brand new copper looks nice and shiny. Like think of a new penny you get. If your copper line is 50 years old, it might not look nice and shiny. It might be hard to identify what it actually is. Well, if you scratch out the piece of metal, it'll now turn nice and shiny. It should. Now, if it's a gray metal, how do you know if it's going to be a steel line, galvanized line, or a lead line? Well, you can scratch those two, and if you scratch it and it turns to a shiny gray, it's probably lead. If you take a magnet and put it on there and it doesn't stick, it's probably lead. Okay, if you scratch it and it doesn't do much, and you stick a magnet on it and it sticks, it's probably galvanized. Okay, that's how you tell the difference, and that's what you would do when you're filling out the survey to figure that out. And then you're gonna take a picture of it and you're gonna attach it to this right to the survey, and you're gonna send it in. Okay. Did anybody scan the QR code at all? It's on that sheet too, and you can scan it on that sheet of paper as well. Any questions with that? Okay. Like I said, I introduced myself. My name is Eric. I've been around town for a while. I've been working with the city for at least 10 years, I would say. So people might know, they might identify me. But Luke and Eilert are two of my coworkers that will be out in town helping with the door-to-door inspection. So I just wanted to share. Neither one of them could make it here today, but I wanted to at least share their photos so people aren't seeing them for the first time when they show up on their doorstep. So both very friendly people, very knowledgeable, so very capable of helping you guys out with the survey if you do need help filling it out. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the future here coming forward. So definitely the goal for the city is to eliminate as many unknowns as possible, because once lead and copper rules improvements takes effect, that's the compliance date, November 1st, 2027, there's going to be some changes. Basically, your inventory at that time becomes your baseline inventory. And any unknown service lines that the city has at that point are assumed to be lead, okay? So that's not good, because a few things. With LCRI, it starts a 10-year required replacement timeline. So the city and every other public water system across the country will be required to replace 10% of their lead service lines per year for 10 years. Okay, so if we have 100 unknowns that we could have identified, that's 100 less lines that we have to replace, you know. So that's why we really want to identify those unknown service lines. So November 1st, 2027 is the big day for that. Other things that happen, so Washburn's been very good on their testing as far as like I said, LCRI, lead and copper rule has been around since 1991. So the city has had to send in samples for lead and copper to be tested since then. Okay, so I have not seen an exceedance that the city's had historically for lead or copper, but the action level for lead is going to become harder to pass with the LCRI. Before it was 15 micrograms per liter. That's 15 parts per billion. That's a very low concentration, but there's a reason for that because lead's harmful. With LCRI, they're lowering that from 15 to 10 parts per billion. So if you do have a service line and there's not much corrosion in it, and it's lead. It might, and it's been squeaking by under 15 parts per billion. It might be triggered now with the 10 parts per billion. So just kind of like tightening it down a little bit more on the standards for lead concentrations. So that's one change. Also, I mentioned already, mandatory full lead service line and galvanized required replacement by December 31st, 2037. So the city will have 10 years to get those lines replaced. There's also some changes in testing. So right now the city only has to do their testing, it's once a year for lead. Now they're going to be having to do it, and that's on reduced monitoring, okay, which is half of what standard monitoring is for the amount of samples. Now they're going to be doing that every 6 months, and it's going to be twice the amount of samples. And it's going to be, for lead, it's going to be on the 1st and 5th liter samples that they'll have to collect. Whereas before, they only took the 1st liter, they turned on the faucet, took 1 liter bottle, and that was their sample. Now they got to fill up the 1st liter, and then they got to fill up 3 more liters for 2, 3, and 4, and then they fill up a 5th liter. Why are we filling up 5 liters? Well, if we're going to truly test the service line, right? Like I said, mentioned earlier, if it's a lead service line, that's where you're going to get your lead concentration from. Like it's going to come off the service line if it's a lead for that home. Well, the first 4 liters are going to take water that's inside the home, right? So that 5th liter, once you turn on your faucet, it's going to better identify water that's sitting inside of that service line. So it's going to be much more accurate test for identifying lead. Does that make sense?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Does it change depending on the distance of the service, the length of the service line versus the size of the home as well? I mean, some homes, it seems like it would be more than 5 liters to get that line or get that water out of there.
Could be potentially, but the 5th liter would be much more representative for most homes, is what I would say.
Okay.
Really, your premise plumbing, if it's a very large home, I suppose, and you're pulling from a spot in the house that's taking the longest distance from where the water comes into the home.
Will there be an effort to go closest to where the water goes in? I don't know.
No, it's usually random, I guess, from what I understand, but you should be you should be pulling water from the service line by the time you get to the 5th liter. You should be. Either way, it'll be much more representative than just taking the 1st liter sample.
I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But it also seems like maybe the 10th would be low.
I suppose you could break it down and do some volume calculations on premise plumbing to figure out how much water actually moves through the home before it's pulling water that was sitting idle. Because that's the other thing, is that you want the water to have sat inside the service line for a duration of time. So like if you were just running laundry and everyone took a shower and like you're running water through there, you wouldn't want to do a sample right after that. You want that to be sitting for a while in that service line before you pull the sample. So that's a whole nother deal when you get into grabbing samples. That's and Adam and his and city staff have been doing great on that, like I said, over the years. So any other questions on this? Okay. Yes, so yeah, the first 3 years, like I said, between LCRR and LCRI, we're currently in almost 2026 already. We're really, like I said, focus on getting that complete inventory and eliminating unknowns to the best of our ability. So complete baseline inventory and work to identify unknowns, develop replacement plan, and develop sampling plan. Sampling plan, we're going to focus on where known lead lines are. we're hoping to, replace, right now I can tell you, we know 15 lead lines for sure in town. And then there's certain areas, Main Street, 4th Avenue, where they're the culprits right now. Of course, it's gonna be the older parts of town. That's where your lead lines are gonna be. And that's true for you could pretty much any public water system, right? With lead being banned since 1989. If your home was built after that, you're in good shape, right? Or the business is built after that, you're good. So the sampling plan, again, the city will utilize what they currently have. I might have to adjust it after we eliminate some of the lead lines, but that's already set up. And like I said, 1st and 5th liter samples. Replacement plan. Like I said, luckily we only have 15 known. I would not expect it to be, for once we complete the inventory, to have 100 lead lines. I really expect it to be somewhere under 50 for Washburn. So the replacement plan shouldn't be too difficult, but that's something that we'll be developing between now and 2027. Funding replacements. So they're the best funding right now that we have, and I'm hopeful for some more and better funding in the future. But the best funding right now is through the SRF program. It's a state revolving fund program, and that's funding the state gets from the Fed, and the state has to allow for loan forgiveness for a certain percentage of the funds that they receive from the Fed, and they have given out up to 66% loan forgiveness on funding for some communities. Now, how much is a grant and how much is a loan really depends on what the state describes as disadvantaged community factors to determine your level of grant, and those factors are up there. So they look at water rates as a percentage of median household income, percent of households below poverty threshold, unemployment rate, and the percent of residents with less than a high school education. That's what they look at. Those are the criteria they look at to determine disadvantaged communities. So I still think no matter where Washburn falls on this, that would be the prime funding that the city would want to look at going after if they were going to do a lead service line replacement. And we've already looked into that. So, but that loan interest rate is 2%, and it can be repaid over 30 years. So, and then of course, whatever other funding that the city would acquire or want to put into it would be considered as well. So that's a common question I get is people will say, how are you going to pay to replace these lead lines? And I will say too that, throughout the years, typically what Washburn has done is always replace their service lines on any water main replacement project all the way up to the curb stop. So that's good. At least that side is known and we know that it's non-lead. But there's other projects in town that the city is targeting, and that's their old cast iron water mains. Those water mains that are at the end of their life or are causing problems for the city with breaks and things like that, or their hydraulics just aren't the best anymore because you get with cast iron, you get buildup on them, right? Tuberculation on the insides of them. So one of the good things is that Main Street has some areas that need to be replaced for water main anyways, and those lead lines would be targeted to be for replacement on a project like that. So there's good ways that the city can go about replacing some of their service lines within projects like that they would have to be doing anyways. So yes, so that's all I got for you guys. Is there any questions that you guys have on lead and copper? Is everybody that's here, do you guys know what materials your service line is? Yeah? Okay, that's good. Like I said, there's only 68 of them in town that we're looking to identify, so shouldn't be too tough, but we're hopeful that we can identify more of those, not just the private side, but also the public side when we do the records review. And then if those homeowners that do have an unknown on the private side, if they can fill out the survey, that'll make it that much easier, and we won't have to go even knock on their door and bug them about it. So if you do know of anyone that might pass the word on that survey is coming out, And like I said, it's already live. If they want the information, they can ask anyone at the city or myself or any of the Dan or Christine that's up there, and we can forward them the survey or even talk with them on the phone and help them through the survey. 'Cause it's really not too tough, but there's, like I said, it's still something you gotta dial up on your phone or a tablet, and it might not be the easiest for everybody. So there's the survey link, and that's a QR code for the survey as well. But thank you guys for your time. I'll be hanging around here for a few more minutes. If you do have any questions, you want to come with me afterwards. So
Could you put the map up of the?
sure.